Let's end the myth that giants built the pyramids, unless you believe ancient giants were over a mile tall. And the reason why that would be the case is some of the bricks in the Great Pyramid are 80 tons. So you would need, modern days, a crane that is 600 ton to be able to actually lift that, just one block. The world's strongest man at one deadlift is 500 kilograms. That was Eddie Hall. 500 kilograms is half a ton. Remember, I just said the heaviest blocks in the Great Pyramid was 80 tons. That's 79.5 more tons that someone would have to carry. So if you doubled Eddie's height, and I mean, he literally could just lift it. He couldn't actually move it and put it on somewhere. But let's just double his height. Let's just say 10 foot. That would be 1 ton. So you would need a absolute giant of a mile high. You think you're so smart. Where's the evidence of the Anunnaki or giants or any of their technology? Well, have a watch of this.
Flowers would travel up and along abandoned towers.
Just 30 years.
After 30 years, the satellites we sent up to explore would fall back down to Earth with no one to collect their data.
So I'm showing here what happens if humans left the Earth, just like the Anunnaki left the Earth.
Drastically. By year 60, marine life would have nearly recovered from decades of overfishing and would
230 years after humans would leave the Earth.
Huge forests will have reclaimed the eastern half of North America, and the only evidence we ever existed would be leftover steel and plastics. Once glorious landmarks would slowly succumb to decay.
So you can see that the Anunnaki stuff would have disappeared unless they had plastic.
The natural world would have succeeded in erasing most of the final traces of human existence. Of course, even after 25,000 years, some of our...
Who's got the hump with my videos? Well, these mounds are all over the United States, and supposedly this is where giant skeletons were found by passers-by or landowners, etc. And they would dig them up and find giant skeletons. Now, we can conclude that this is correct because back in 1982, archaeologists have found these mounds, and in the same year, 1882, remember, the Smithsonian actually went along and uncovered 50 mounds which found giant skeletons of 7'6" or taller. Now, this supposedly has now been debunked by Olivia Jones, as you see here. She's called it a myth. So when you look at Olivia Jones, PhD, University of Virginia, West Virginia, guess who? Rockefeller. Yeah, there we go. So we know that anything to do with Rockefeller isn't debunked. The Dead Sea Scrolls talk about giants. In fact, the Dead Sea Scrolls are ancient Jewish and Hebrew writings on these parchments that were found in a cave. Now, the Book of Giants isn't really a Book of Giants. It literally is these parchments that people have created to call the Book of Giants, just like they did with the Book of Enoch. And so you've got the Book of Enoch there, where people have converted it into a sort of a modern day looking book. But the Dead Sea Scrolls actually go through, or the Book of Giants, if you want to call it that, talk about how big giants were and things like that. So we've got another ancient record, not just of the skeletons, but actually of someone talking about these giants. Now you got to remember, only a handful of people could write back then, so for them to make up these fictitious stories would have been really crazy. When you add the actual correct translations of words in the Bible totally changes from what you believe it was. So let's have a look here. There's a website here that can actually go from English to Aramaic, which is fine, that's great, but let's have a look at just some of the words that were wrong in the Bible that obviously back then they didn't know the other words for it. So heaven should be the word space. So when next time they say they looked up in heaven, it was space. Angel is really a guard, a physical being, a guard or a policeman type thing. It's an Anunnaki real person, but it's a military of some sort. Holy angel is just a superior version, so in other words a superior guard. Archangel is a commander or a captain, again still Anunnaki. Firmament is the word atmosphere, not a dome, not a solid thing. Elohim is actually the Anunnaki's real race.